So welcome to the Friday special with our honored guests, Stephen K. Bannon, and I'm Ava.
I'm Roy.
So we have Steve on the line. So Steve, go ahead.
Hey guys, how you doing? Thank you for having me on this week.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So we have a number of questions for you. Of course,
Sure.
there's lots happening, and I know you've been. It's a long day for you, so we really appreciate that you support the Chinese Lao Baixin by coming here every Friday. So my first question, the CCP fears President Trump, and you and Miles Guo for your ability to connect with people, American or Chinese Lao Baixin, and that is why War Room is the most feared and censored podcast globally. So as the CCP internal purges intensifies, we are, all the fellow fighters or the anti-CCP or the people supporting our mission are genuinely concerned that the CCP might resort to extreme measures to target the three of you. So how concerned are you?
Well, I mean, we're always concerned because, we have been targeted with audits and deplatforming and debanking and all that, and of course going to prison. And President Trump's had an assassination attempt, plus, the 300 years in prison they're trying to put him in. However, I think we're seeing, we're going to make an announcement next week as one of the biggest platforms in the world is bringing on the content of the War Room. And one of the reasons is they like the fact that we're giving out information about China and the CCP that nobody else is giving. I mean, they came to us after, and this is a platform that had banned us, but they like the content they see on the War Room. They've kind of watched it for 4 years, about 4 years, 4.5 years, and they like the content. And of course, one of our big differentiations is telling the true story in the CCP, and I think that's got a big worldwide audience. I think they feel it does too. So, look, I'm always apprehensive. You always got to be careful. They've got Miles in prison. They had me in prison. They are trying to put Trump in prison. If they steal the election in 28, we're back to square one. But, and we got to make more progress in taking down the deep state, and particularly the deep state's interconnections with the CCP and the security service for the CCP. So you should always be careful. I'm actually more concerned about Miles in prison, and because I daily want to make sure that he's safe. Also, I'm always very concerned about President Trump, particularly the fact that there's been two assassination attempts on him.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And how should the MAGA protect itself against the CCP's potentially, reckless attempts to eliminate whatever it seems as a threat? And do you believe anyone in the current administration is capable of decisively confronting the CCP and protecting MAGA's interests?
Well, obviously Trump is. I mean, for MAGA, we know that the War Room Posse, which is kind of the activist branch of the kind of the right, what they call the Bannon wing or whatever, it's the activist branch. We know they understand it because every time we have you guys on or other experts from the from the Committee on the Present Danger China to all these other experts we have on, our audience is very fluent in this topic. When I put things up on Gettr, you get very, very sophisticated comments back. So, number one, what we have to with MAGA is make sure that we've expanded out within all of MAGA, and that's what I hope Gettr turns into as the platform for MAGA, that we expand out so that everybody in the MAGA movement is at a level set when it comes to information. I don't think we're there yet. Once we get there, we can, then take it to the next level with independents and really Democrats. You would think that particularly back after Tiananmen Square in the 1990s, the biggest protesters, pro-Tiananmen Square, revolutionaries, the pro-Tiananmen Square student protesters, their biggest supporters really the Democratic Party. That's all gone away as the Democratic Party's kind of been bought off by the CCP. This is why they don't even support the tariffs or trade or anything President Trump's trying to do on engaging in the economic war the CCP is visiting on the United States. So for us, I think our mission, and this is why I've got a lot of ideas I'll be sharing with you guys as we get some bigger international platforms here that have bigger international potential audiences, is doing more stuff with New Federal State, more stuff on Gettr, just more specials, take segments and drill down. The one thing I think it's shown us here recently is President Trump as we said would happen, is engage in a total essential war against the CCP because they brought it on themselves. And I think even in President Trump's thing, he needs assistance in actually making sure we explain it as plainly as possible. And one of the things I love coming on the show, you and Ava are two of the best I've ever worked with, and obviously Forrest is great too. So I think it's just we need to redouble our efforts. We need to do more content. We need to do deeper content. We need to do content with better graphics, all of that. But here's what I do know. The content that we're putting out is attracting a lot of people, particularly our content on the CCP, because nobody covers it like we do. Yes. And the American people out there, and even people I know in Europe and England, they can't figure out, hey, what's all this stuff with China? China looks like it's overwhelming people. Once we explain to them kind of the Miles Guo school of deconstructing the criminal enterprise, which is what's housed in Beijing. The first thing I tell you right now, when we're on the show and we talk about only 90,000 Chinese nationals are members of the Chinese Communist Party with a 1.2 or 1.3 billion population, people, I mean, they're in shock. Right now, the world basically thinks everybody in China is a communist. They don't realize that the party itself is quite small. And then the cadres, the ruling cadres, as you know, Miles taught us, is a couple of thousand, right? Maybe 5,000 max, but the factions that fight for power and control all the time, and particularly the power players, are probably under 1,000 people. This is one of the things that Miles Guo was like the Rosetta Stone to the West. Nobody really understood. For instance, in Kremlinology, we had a very good idea how the Kremlin worked because we had defectors, so many intellectuals that come from Russia. Mm-hmm. You had particularly a lot of these great Jewish professors came that really knew how to break down the Politburo, break down the Bolsheviks. We had a very, very sophisticated understanding of the Politburo, and that even went out to the general public, the reading public. I remember coming as a kid, I made a couple of films after I started becoming a filmmaker back in the early 2000s. But I remember coming as a kid, as a paper boy, that information was in the papers all the time. You just had to read it. There's very few sophisticated breakdowns of the factions of the Chinese Communist Party. Most of those are in pretty obscure books. They are out there, but the information I've gone through all the information. I've read, hundreds of books on this topic. It's out there, but man, it is really, you got to do work. And you then have Miles Guo's broadcasts, which are just, a tremendous gift to the West to really define and break down, regardless of what you think of Miles Guo. If you just listen to his broadcast of his deconstruction of the power structure of the Chinese Communist Party, it's nothing short of brilliant. But that is what we need to promulgate more. You guys are doing a great job on it. And this is why we need to do more in Gettr. We need to do more together. You guys on War Room, me on New Federal State, because people hunger. What we do know is when people get access to this information, they absorb it and they want more. And it's one of the reasons I think we're going up on this platform next week, is that they understand that, for all the unique stuff that we put out on War Room, one of the most unique things we put out is a very sophisticated look at the existential threat that is the Chinese Communist Party. And we take it from both Lao Baixing's perspective and the American perspective. And nobody does that. And that is what people hunger for, this content. I can tell you, I can see in the chat rooms, I can see when we present it, when we have you guys on, or when I repurpose and put the weekly interview you guys do with me, when I put it back up on my vertical over at Gettr or over at Telegram or anywhere I put it, it gets a lot of comments and it gets a lot of traction.
Yes, Steve, this reminds me of a speech that you delivered 2 years ago on, I think it was Nfsc, if I remember correctly. You mentioned people first needs to be informed and then activate and then weaponize their strengths and together. So I think this is where I'm looking forward to more your voice, your war room, and plus Miles Guo's revelation on within the CCP's insights gets promulgated to more audience. So I'm looking forward to that. So question number 3, I have it here, is about Chinese weapons. So during the Russian-Ukraine war conflict and the recent Pakistan-India conflict, these two conflicts has elevated the profile of the CCP's defense industry. Our intel from within the Chinese Communist Party indicates that many countries right now around the world are now seeking arms deals with the CCP, a trend that could inevitably accelerate global weapons proliferation. What can the United States do in response?
You mean on the proliferation of nuclear weapons or proliferation of all weapons?
All weapons, including nuclear technology, missiles, drones, everything. I think the horse is out of the barn. And the reason is the entire look at the budget we have now. You know, we have a $1 trillion defense industry, but also all the foreign aid essentially that goes to the Ukraine's other thing is really to buy weapons. The United States is the industrial policy of the United States today, I think it needs to be changed radically, but is a massive arms industry. This is why the weapons industry kind of controls Capitol Hill. It's even worse in China. China's economy really is on a war footing. It's one of the reasons that they haven't been able to shift to a consumer spending. The consumers are smart enough to know that they need to save because the CCP lies to them and there may not be money there for their retirement. They've already cut their families down to one kid, one child. They don't have big families like the Chinese used to. That they don't trust the CCP. There's no social safety net. So one of the reasons they haven't been able to shift from a production economy or export economy to a consumer is that the La Beijing doesn't trust them, and and the La Beijing's pretty smart not to trust them because they're not trustworthy. They've never lived up to any application of the La Beijing. In addition, a tremendous look at China. China's budget on defense, I think, is $350 billion this year. This is from a standing start of under 50. Now. And that's keeping a lot of people in high value added jobs employed in China, but they're doing it. Their house is a financial disaster, but they're still doing this because they know arms and weapons employ people, whereas other industries are shutting down. They also know employees them in high jobs, plus they want the weapons. So I think if you look throughout the world, I would love to be able to tell people that we've got our hands on the weapons industry. We don't. The weapons industry is out of control. Right now, you're in these kinetic wars. Look, my theory of the case, and I think I'm right on this, if we lose the election in South Korea, and I cannot emphasize to your audience how big a deal that is, we will literally give over to the CCP what Americans and Koreans paid in blood back 75 years ago to keep free. And we will turn it back over to the CCP. Once that happens, given the financial problems that Japan has and the demographic problems Japan has and the economic problems Japan has, which kind of leads to their financial problem, who are kind of paralyzed right now a little bit. The CCP are doing rehearsals on Taiwan, not exercises. They've left exercises a long time ago. They're actually rehearsing an invasion in front of our eyes every day. Yes. So I think the kinetic part of this in Ukraine, in Kursk, it's worse than it's ever been. Or I shouldn't say it's worse than ever. It's very bad. And why? Because she went to Moscow and spent 3 days with Putin, of which they were doing the military parades and all the activities, all the dinners, and they signed 35 documents. They came closer together, not wider apart. That's why since she left, Putin's been very difficult to deal with in Ukraine. He's been of no help in Persia on the Iranian nuclear situation. And they've gotten more active than ever, I think, in the Middle East, particularly with the Houthis. And they're trying to take down South Korea without bullets, but the ballot box, and then I think launch very quickly thereafter an assault on Taiwan and feel that the United States will not defend them. Yes. So
we're in a very this next 100 days from now to Labor Day is, I think, the most critical time in either of President Trump's two presidencies. Like I said, we will honor the 10th anniversary of coming down the golden escalator on June 15th, Father's Day. If you look at the 10 years, I say it's all a preamble to what happens over the next couple of 100 days. Because right now the convergence of these crises is pretty obvious. And how President Trump handles these, how he comes up with solutions for them, will basically start to set his legacy.
Absolutely, it's so important. And I'm glad that you mentioned about Middle East. Our source reveals that the CCP is very pleased with Pakistan's weapon debut. and plans to accelerate arms proliferation into the Middle East, like Yemen and Syria. So that's why we always say like the CCP is the driving force of anti-Semitism, right? And the CCP insiders we have also view a U.S.-Iran nuclear deal as unlikely, but like Israel and Iran are very likely to have an open conflict. So what's your take on this?
It's a huge problem. I mean, it can't, right now, the side that I support, which is maximum on the, a maximalist on the deconstruction of it, either through economic warfare and diplomacy, but no shooting war. President Trump is talking about it. I don't see it going into action as of yet, and that is to cut off 100% of the energy supply from Persia to the CCP. They admit to 1.6 million a day coming out of the Straits of Hormuz through the Malacca Straits to China. That's what they admit to. It's actually over 2 million. And we should cut that off immediately. We should take one of the carrier battle groups we've had down off of the Red Sea, off of the southern tip of Arabia in Yemen. We should take one of those carrier battle groups, put them up to Hormuz. We should blockade. We should embargo every vessel that comes out under Iranian flag or not Iranian flag. They should be boarded if they're not Iranian flags, Persian flags, and see if they're shuttling contraband oil and gas over to the CCP. And the way to do this is President Trump goes back to his maximum campaign, his maximum pressure campaign of 2018 and 19. That was working, and what they have now is kind of a follow-on from Biden. It's certainly not anywhere near as tough, and I think that's what we need to do now.
Mm-hmm. So my last question, Steve, we understand, we know the CCP is the de facto force behind Israel's crisis since October 2023, whether it's shenanigans in UN councils voting or, all those meetings, and whether it's supporting Hamas, despite an all-out assault, influential Jewish communities and Jewish figures still do business with the CCP. Has Israel not realized the CCP is driving the global anti-Semitism? What's your take on that?
I can understand that because of what they're doing and their reach. It's quite fascinating to me that it's spread like wildfire in the United States. Part of the reason I tell my conservative Jewish friends, because I'm a big supporter of Israel, I think a lot of it's the Jewish community has not gone after, and the conservative community has not shut down the progressive Jewish community. And I think a lot of conservatives blame them for a lot of problems you see in these universities and schools, etc. There is definitely the black hand of the CCP everywhere. The black hand of the CCP and what's happening in the Middle East, the black hand of the CCP with Qatar and with Persia. Mm-hmm. I think the black hand of the CCP in Turkey. I think the black hand of the CCP in Egypt. Mm-hmm. And I believe Israel's being surrounded right now. Turkey, Persia, and
Correct.
Egypt.
Yes.
Ancient civilizations, great powers, and the CCP's in back of that. So Israel's being surrounded. The day-to-day, the combination, the merger of red-green alliance, what we call the neo-Marxist revolutionary left, right? This woke, destructive, hate the Judeo-Christian West and Western civilizations left, combined with jihad, and they're kind of in a uncomfortable shotgun marriage, but they'll do anything to take down the Judeo-Christian West, particularly Israel and the United States. That's and the CCP's in back of that. So their hands are everywhere. Mm-hmm. That being said, I do think anti-Semitism, and particularly how exacerbated it's gotten, does have other elements to it. Part of that is the progressive Jewish and the conservative Jewish. They really haven't had the types of fights that you would expect if the conservative Jewish folks want to make sure that they're not spewing their anti-Israel. Because a lot of the anti-Israel comes from faculty members and administrators who happen to be progressive Jews who hate Israel. And that's where the confusing message is, and I think it's confusing people and causing consternation.
So I'm hoping, Wurim and with the new federal state of China, we will bring more information on how the black hands of the CCP working behind the scenes to drive the global anti-Semitism, and how Jewish people, can actually organize, activated, and to save their own freedom and country. So thank you so much, Steve, for taking your time today and to come
Thank
today.
you. I love doing the show. You guys ask great questions. Of course, let's make the announcement. You guys are on the show tomorrow. We have 2 hours of going through a situation report of where actually Trump, the MAGA movement, the United States stands vis-a-vis the unrestricted warfare of the CCP. I think it's going to be fascinating tomorrow. And then, of course, Roy and Eva, you are going to be with us on Tuesday night when we launch our new federal state, the 5th anniversary commemoration of the events in Tiananmen Square, starting at dawn in Beijing on Tuesday, and then we pick it back up in the war room at 10 a.m. to 12 noon on Wednesday morning.
Yes.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, please
Thank you
join
so
us
much.
on War Room tomorrow and Saturday. So thank you so much, Stephen.
Thanks,
Steve,
guys.
we love you,
Appreciate you.
and have a
you
great
guys,
weekend.
Love you, sir.
See you.
Take down the CCP, freeze Miles Guo, and next year Beijing.
Yes,
Next
take
year,
down the
Beijing.
CCP,
Free
free
Miles
Miles Guo, next year Beijing. Thank you.
Love you guys.
Yeah, love you. So
Love
thank
you,
you
bye.
for watching, and this is Ava and Roy. We will see you next Friday, and please do tune in tomorrow on War Room on Saturday, and also tune in on June 3rd with a new Federal State of China special edition, special events on War Room, and opening to the full day celebration on June 4th. Thank you. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.